Alright, so we're going to look at excuse me, bidding methods in the context of fair division. And what I mean by that is that obviously last thing we were dividing things up into either piles or slices or something. And now what we're going to do is we're going to actively bid on items. So we're going to look at two procedures. The first is called the adjusted winner procedure. And basically this is when there's a number of issues between two parties. So the classical example of this is if two companies merge, who's the CEO? And who is the, all these kinds of things. What name do they take? Those sorts of things. So what happens is each party is going to get 100 points. Now, it's 100 points. Obviously, you could have done 1,000. But they're going to put a bid on each item that they want. So if somebody really, really wants the CEO position to be their guy, then they're going to bid fairly high on that item. Now, what happens is that once the two parties put a bid on each item, whatever the highest bid takes that item. Now, there's an issue with that. There's an issue that, well, it could be the truth that, somebody just bid 1 point more on all but one item, and so they got all but one item. So what's going to happen is there's this adjustment. So there's a bid, and then there's adjustment. And the adjustment is basically each party counts their unused points, or their used points, and you start swapping items until they're more or less equal, till they equal out, the number of points that people spent. Alright? So let's do an example. So here we see a number of issues. Here we have 6 issues. Now, there's two people who are bidding on these things. Person A really values issue number 1 very highly, obviously. They spent half of their points on it. And they really don't value issue number 6 at all. Okay? So all we have to do is, for each item, just say who is the high bid. Now this is, well, we start out by doing that. Person A is obviously the winner. A is obviously the winner here. A, B wins, B wins, and B wins. Okay? Now, I want to point out that what this is doing is essentially saying to everyone that person B values this issue number 4 as 20% of all of the issues. Alright? And person A values this first issue at 50% compared to all these other issues. Now here's how the adjustment works. What you're going to do is you're going to calculate all of the points spent by A. A has spent, well, there's 50, 15, 15. So A has spent 80 points. B has spent, well, there's 20 and 20 and 15. So B has spent 75 points. No, I'm sorry, not 75, 55 points. So B has spent 55 points. I apologize for that. And now clearly this is an uneven scenario. Okay? Where A has won 80% of what they want, B has won 55%. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to adjust this. And the way we adjust it is we take things away from A. Now, notice that if I subtract either the item number 2 or 3, then A will have spent 65 points. And if I give them item 2 or give B item 2 or 3, they will have added 10 points. So that adjustment at the end allows us to balance out, the goods that A have won and the goods that B have won in their own eyes. Okay? Now what we're going to do, this is kind of arbitrary. Usually the practice, it happens, if there's 2 items, like 2 and 3, you'll ask A, you'll say, well, which one do you want to give up? Right? And A will say, well, I'd rather give up 3 than 2. So let's pretend A gives up 3 instead of 2. So the owner of the issues, when I say owner, it doesn't have to be a physical issue. The owner of whoever gets their way, A gets issues numbers 1 and 2, and B will get the remaining 4 issues. Okay, so that's how the adjusted winning procedure works. Everybody bids. You first start out looking at the highest bid. Look how much each individual spent. And then once you've done that, you try to, as best you can, balance things out by, getting rid of things for A and giving things to B. All right, well, whoever's in, obviously, if B had spent 80 and you do the reverse. So that's how the adjusted winning procedure works. Now, I do want to say that for just a moment, if you look at the bidding here, we did a pretty straightforward bidding. There are times when it's really, really hard to make these guys balanced. Okay, so sometimes people will get as close as they can to making things balanced and call it good enough. Okay, obviously, if we had different numbers here, maybe it would be possible to get to 65 for A and 60 for B. All right, if for instance, if both of these were 5s and this guy was a 30, we may be able to, mess around and play with it. We might not get perfect amounts, is all I'm saying. All right. So that's I'm not saying that those are the exact numbers that work, but you might have to be capable of getting close enough. Now, the adjusted winner procedure has a lot of advantages. First off, it's very nice when we're talking about non-monetary issues, because giving somebody 100 points, you've put a value on it. You've put a value on that issue. You've put a point value. Okay? And the other thing that's nice about the adjusted winning procedure is that notice that neither side has an advantage. When we saw the divider chooser, we saw that it was always best to go last. In this procedure, no side has an advantage. So a lot of the times, people will get more than 50 points out of 100 because of the different valuations. You and the person that you're bidding against often have different values. So whereas as we saw in the example, our example, they both walked away with 65 points, but obviously the vast majority of times you get more than 50 points out of 100. And remember, 50 points out of 100 is a fair share. So as long as they're coming away with more than 50 points, then they have a good feeling about walking away. All right? So especially nice when you don't have monetary issues. Most of the time, people are going to get more than 50 points, and then no party has an advantage or disadvantage based on the position. Now, the disadvantage is sometimes it's hard to decide how to reallocate after the highest bin wins. Okay, and that's kind of a big deal sometimes. That do you get rid of issue number 2 or 3, or those kinds of things. So sometimes that's hard. Also, disadvantage, while person A may get 65% of their point values, person B may end up with only 60%, or person B may end up with 70%. So they might not be exact perfection with reallocation ideas. Now, another big disadvantage that I hadn't mentioned in this slide is, well, what if we had 2 bidders and there's a bunch of issues, but both bid like 75 and 80 points on a single issue? Okay? Then, bad things may happen. Okay, then people, all of a sudden, this issue number 1 is really, really valuable to both players. And if you give it to person B, then person A can only get up to 25% of the points they spent. So this is really nice, but oftentimes it's nice only when any of the issues isn't going to be over 50% for both people. So here's the problem. I said issues, but the same thing works with inheritance problem. Okay, so let's say a mother dies, and she has basically 3 major assets: a house, a car, and a bunch of trinkets. Okay, everything else is kind of worthless. So a house, a car, and a bunch of trinkets. Now, the house is much more valuable than, let's say, the car and the trinkets. In fact, let's say the car and the trinkets put together. So we can't nicely divide it and do a divider-chooser method where piles are 1/3. Also, if you were going to do the adjusted winner procedure, probably all 3 of the children would put over half the value in the house. Maybe they all put the house at 75% of the estate. So having this one big issue or this one big house causes a problem. So here's what you can do in that case. You can transfer to what's called the Knaster inheritance, or in other words, the sealed bids method. All right? It's called the Knaster inheritance procedure. So basically, we have tangible assets. This doesn't work as well when the issues are like who's going to get the CEO, who's going to be the CEO, and so those kinds of things. But they could work in that as well. I mean, I know there's probably companies who would relish the fact that somebody would pay them to be their CEO or something like that. But anyways, let's pretend we have tangible assets like houses and cars and trinkets. What's going to happen is that each party is going to put a monetary bid on each item. So they're going to say, well, the house is worth this, the car is worth this, the trinkets are worth this. And whoever put the highest bid wins. All right? If you ever have a tie, we'll settle that by a coin flip or some other way. So what's going to happen is that highest bid wins. Now, the losers don't walk away with nothing, all right? Because after the highest bid wins, then all of the parties are going to settle the difference between how they valued the estate and whatever the value of goods that they received was. And then when everybody has settled the difference, there's going to be a little bit of money, typically, left in a pot, and that's going to be divided evenly. Now, I know that sounds complicated, but I'll show you how that works. So take this example. Let's say we have a house, a car, and some trinkets. Excuse me. All right. And we have three people who are going to do the inheriting. Matt, Jordan, Rachel. All right. So Matt bids the house at $120,000, the car at $15,000, and the trinkets at $3,000. So his total bid is $138,000. Okay. Jordan put the house at $110,000, $12,000, and $4,000 for the car and trinkets. So $110,000 plus $12,000 plus $4,000, that gets you to a $126,000 bid. Rachel turns out she also bid everything at $138,000. Okay. So, by the way, don't worry about the winner of that. There's no winner in the total. So here's what happens. We look at each item, a house, and we say Matt gets the house. He's the one that bid the most. We say look at the car and say, well, Rachel gets the car. She bid the most. All right. And we say, well, who gets the trinkets? Rachel gets the trinkets. Now you might think, oh, well, Jordan didn't get anything. He's really out of luck. Well, not really. So here's how it works. What happens is that if we notice the total bid is $138,000. So what Matt thinks is that the total estate is worth $138,000. So since there's three people, Matt is essentially saying that he should get out $46,000 worth of stuff. That's 1/3 of the $138,000. And by the way, Rachel is, since she had the exact same bid, is thinking the same thing. She thinks $46,000 is her portion. Now Jordan, since he bid $126,000, he believes that $42,000 is his portion. All right. Now let's take a look at this. Matt is going to receive the house. So Matt thinks he gets $120,000. Or he's seeing that he's getting $120,000. He believes that his portion of the estate is $46,000. So what's going to happen is that basically there's a $74,000 difference. Okay. Now, be careful on this because Matt's difference of $74,000 is that he got $74,000 more than what he thought his 1/3 is worth. All right. So he basically owes $74,000. Jordan, well, he didn't get anything, right? He got $0 worth of stuff. So Jordan thinks that he should get $42,000. And Rachel, well, we have this $46,000. Rachel got both the car and the trinket, so she got $23,000. And her portion was $46,000, so she's $46,000 minus $23,000. She thinks that she's still owed. That she is still owed, not that she owes. She thinks she needs to get $23,000 more to settle the score. Excuse me. All right. So we see that Matt, since he got the house, believes he owes $74,000. Jordan believes he should get $42,000. Rachel believes she should get $23,000. All right. And so let me write that down. Again, Matt thinks that he should owe $74,000. Jordan thinks that he should get $42,000. Rachel thinks that she should owe. No, excuse me. Gosh, I keep writing owe. That she should get $23,000. So that's what you do. Matt is going to pay in $74,000. Okay? So Matt's going to pay in $74,000 into a pot. Jordan's going to say, okay, Matt paid in $74,000. I'm going to take out my $42,000 worth. Rachel's going to say, well, I'm going to take out my $23,000 worth that I'm owed. Okay? Now notice that that's going to leave $9,000 in the pot. All right? And so what they do with the remaining $9,000 is they split up the $9,000 into $3,000, $3,000, and $3,000. All right? So there you go. Matt gets the house. So Matt gets the house, but pays in $74,000. Jordan gets nothing, but he gets $42,000. Rachel gets the trinkets in the car and gets also $23,000. And then from the pot, at the end, when it adds up, you have this $3,000 for each person remaining in the pot. All right. So that's how the sealed bids method works. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to push pause on the video. We have 5 items now between Matt, Jordan, Rachel, and each of them has each of them has bid on each of the items. And so what I like you to do is, again, push pause. Use the Knaster inheritance procedure, or in other words, the sealed bids method, to calculate who gets what. And then also calculate how much money each gets and how much they get from the pot. All right, so excuse me. So hopefully you calculated this. The value that Matt has put on everything, meaning the sum of all those bids, is $128,500. That means his portion, he thinks, is $42,833. Okay? Now what he's going to get, well, he's going to get, if you calculated this, essentially car 2. Matt gets that one. And so he got $12,000 worth of stuff. Okay? Now, I want to point out I'm doing this very much on purpose of how I'm writing this. I'm going to write this the same each time. So, there's a $30,833, and this is a positive, so he should be getting this much from the pot. He should be getting $30,833. Now, Jordan's bid was $127,000. $46,500. So his portion in his own mind is $42,167. He's going to get car 1, whoops, and also the trinkets. So he got $14,000 worth of stuff. So that means he's still owed $28,167. Now I'm rounding everything to the nearest dollar. If you rounded everything near cents, that's no big deal. But it is a positive number here. Rachel, well, all of her bids add up to $136,500. So that means her portion in her eyes looks like $45,500. She receives the house and the furniture. Okay? So that means she got, in her eyes, $112,500 worth of stuff. Okay? Notice that when you subtract this, you're going to get a negative, and it's going to be a negative $67,000. All right? So Rachel is going to put $67,000 into the pot. Matt and Jordan are both going to get out these two values, $28,000 and almost $31,000. All right? So let's just recap this. So Matt's going to get car 2. Car 2. And he's going to receive $30,833. Okay. Jordan gets car 1 and the trinkets. And he's going to receive $28,167. Rachel gets the house and the furniture. And she is going to owe or give $67,000 into the pot. Now, remember, there's still the pot balance that has to go. If Rachel puts in $67,000 and Matt and Jordan take out their values, that means there's $8,000 left. So each gets, so I'm going to put and gets, and gets, and gets. Well, take 8,000, divide that by 3. That's 2,667 or 206,066. Basically $2,666 each person would have to get. Now, again, this comes up to be slightly different because there is a rounding issue here. So I guess everybody will have to fight over that last penny or over that last dollar, depending on how we round it, or the last $2. Okay, so they get that much from the pot. Oops. Okay, so that's what's happening. Matt gets the car number 2. receives $30,000 and gets $2,666. Now, let me just state that this was equitable, because remember, Matt thinks in his own mind that car 2 plus this $30,833 is worth 1/3. That was if you add up the total here of what he got, that was 1/3 of the actual value he bid. And Jordan has the car, the trinkets, and this amount, and that adds up to 1/3 of the value he got. And when Rachel got the house and the furniture and spent $67,000, she ended up with gaining 1/3 of the value. So basically, each person gets 1/3, plus, because of the way that the pot works, and the pot's always going to work like this because, well, usually it's going to work like this because people will not bid the same on everything. In the end, everybody got $2,666. There's $2 left over, but there you go. Okay. Now here's the deal: the sealed bid method is very equitable. All right, because first off, everybody gets their fair share. We saw that everybody. Based on the way the pot works and based on the way the valuation works, everybody's going to get their fair share as they see it. They're going to get at least 1/3, plus they're going to get whatever was in the pot, or this little extra amount that's in the pot. Okay, so it's very equitable and very good, and it applies in a lot of places. It's probably one of the best methods for actually doing this, the inheritance thing. Okay. Now here's a disadvantage. The disadvantage is you need to have cash to make it work. Okay. So in my example, we saw that Rachel owed $67,000. Now, if Rachel doesn't have $67,000 on hand, that's going to be a problem, because then, things can't be divided nicely. Okay? Also, there's a disadvantage that no item can be priceless, meaning here we are putting a monetary value on every single item. Okay? And some items, people think, well, this is a family heirloom and all that kind of stuff. So a disadvantage is that no item can be priceless. Now, I will say, in my opinion, if it's a physical object, right, even if it's this masterpiece artwork, obviously three people can bid on basically any object. Okay. But some people don't like that. But again, if you have a quote, priceless item, unquote, then, things get a little weird. Okay? But it brings up a good moral argument. Can in fact, there be a physical object which is priceless? Right? Let's say if the mother owned a dog, is that really a priceless object, or would people pay even for that to be bid on? Or there's all kinds of things like this. My mother has a quilt that was handed down from a couple of generations. Is that really a priceless object, or could we actually in fact bid on that? Right? So there's a moral argument to say, well, moral question, I guess. Can any physical object be in fact priceless? But anyways, that's getting a little bit off the topic in this. So anyways, advantage is that it's very equitable. Everybody gets their fair share. The real main disadvantage is that you have to have cash to make it work. And if Rachel doesn't have that cash, then we're into a mess of problems, right? She has to go find that cash somehow. Okay? All right. Those are the two bidding methods that we're going to look at in the fair division chapter.